Hare Krishna devotees, welcome to day 12 of our Bhakti Vaibhava seminar on Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 4. We are now beginning chapter 7. Chapter 7, which is titled The Sacrifice Performed by Daksha. I've already been through the different sections, just the names of the sections, and now we're going to get into it. First of all, though, our prayers. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachade Shatarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha, Kripasindhubhya eva cha, Paritanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. First of all, let's get into the first section. It's from verse 1 to verse 7. We call it Lord Shiva responds to Brahma's requests and is invited to the yajna arena. If you remember from the last session we had, in number 11, that Lord Brahma, of course, he's so terribly offended, but Lord Brahma has appealed to him to please forgive Daksha and those others who sort of became involved, like on his side, and created disturbances. Please forgive them and let us carry on in Krishna consciousness. So this now is, Brahma's requested like that, and now Lord Shiva is going to respond from verse 1 to verse 7. Okay, so first of all, even though it's not a big section, but there's a number of purports here. There's a number of purports. So first of all, we should just go through the verses and then come back and do the purports. So that's what we'll do right now. Okay, so verse 1. The sage Maitreya said, O mighty Am Vidura, Lord Shiva, being thus pacified by the words of Lord Brahma, spoke as follows in answer to Lord Brahma's request. Verse 2, Lord Shiva said, My dear father, Brahma, I do not mind the offences created by the demigods, because these demigods are childish and less intelligent. I do not take a serious view of their offences, and I've punished them. And I've punished them only in order to right them. Verse 3, Lord Shiva continued, Since the head of Daksha has already been burnt to ashes, he will have the head of a goat. The demigod known as Bhaga will be able to see his share of sacrifice through the eyes of Mitra. Verse 4, the demigod Pusha will be able to chew only through the teeth of his disciples, and if alone, he will have to satisfy himself by eating dough made from chickpea flour. But the demigods who have agreed to give me my share of the sacrifice will recover from all their injuries. Verse 5, those who have had their arms cut off will have to work with the arms of Ashwini Kumar, and those whose hands were cut off will have to do their work with the hands of Pusha. The priests will also have to act in that manner. As for Brigu, he will have the beard from the goat's head. 6. The great sage Maitreya said, my dear Vidura, all the personalities present were very much satisfied in heart and soul upon hearing the words of Lord Shiva, who is the best among the benedictors. Verse 7, thereafter Brigu, the chief of the great sages, invited Lord Shiva to come to the sacrificial arena. Thus the demigods, accompanied by the sages, Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, all went to the place where the great sacrifice was being performed. Okay, those are the verses. That is the flow of the discussion and the development of the situation, on the basis of the verses themselves. So let's go through again and include the purports. Verse 1, the sage Maitreya said, O mighty armed Vidura, Lord Shiva, being thus pacified by the words of Lord Brahma, spoke as follows in answer to Lord Brahma's request. 2. Lord Shiva said, my dear father, Brahma, I do not mind the offenses created by the demigods, because these demigods are childish and less intelligent. I do not take a serious view of their offenses, and I've punished them only in order to right them. So, we have a purport here to verse 2. Prabhupada makes the point that there are two types of punishment. One is that which a conqueror imposes on an enemy. Really, more brutal, smashing the enemy. And the second is like that a father imposes on his son. And that, of course, it's punishment. It's punishment. But it's done in a mood of affection for the benefit of the punishee. I don't think there is such a word, but anyway, the one who's being punished. It's done for that person's benefit, to help them become a better person and live a better life and become a happier person. And of course, we would generally apply in regard to devotees to become a better devotee and a happier devotee. So there's a great difference between these. So of course, Lord Shiva, he's a Vaishnav, not just a Vaishnav, but he is Vaishnavanam Yata Shambho. He's the greatest of all the Vaishnavas. So his nature then in this regard is that he will not really, in general, he will definitely not punish someone just to hurt them and smash them. But he'll do it, punish, but so they become improved. Yes, and therefore Prabhupada makes the point that in this connection Lord Shiva's name is Ashutosh. Asha means desire, and Tosh means one who satisfies. At least that's one way of translating the word Ashutosh. And Lord Shiva's always satisfied. And so he doesn't become angry like an enemy with their enemy. He's not inimical towards anyone, but rather he's always wishing everyone the very best. And whenever he chastises, punishes, it's like a father punishing his son. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, Lord Shiva's like a father, because he never takes seriously any offense by any living entities, especially the demigods. Verse 3, Lord Shiva continued, since the head of Daksha has already been burned to ashes, he will have the head of a goat. The demigod known as Bhaga will be able to see his share of sacrifice through the eyes of Mitra. Mitra. Well, Mitra is generally the personality of death, or connected at least with that. Of course, the first point here in the verse, actually there's no purport, but the first point is that when Virabhadra, the monstrous demon actually, decapitated Daksha by using the, it sounds like it's a type of a guillotine cutting device for killing the sacrificial animals. So he stuck Daksha in that and then dropped that guillotine, bang, on the neck of Daksha, which just completely cut off the head. Then he threw the head, if you remember correctly, into the southern side of the fire. So therefore Daksha's head has just been burnt up, and there's no question of taking the same head and somehow sticking it back on, which would have actually been possible if the head had been not like destroyed. If the head had been preserved and was still there in one piece, with the power of these demigods, the same head could have just been put straight back on his shoulders, and by their mystical powers it would have joined together, and physically he would have more or less looked the same as he had before. But now there's no head because it's ashes, it's just finished, gone. Yeah. So Lord Shiva is saying that we'll take the head of a goat and stick it on. And then it's talked about a little further on, actually, what happens when they put the head of the goat on the shoulders of Daksha. Verse 4, the demigod Pusha will be able to chew only through the teeth of his disciples, and if alone, he'll have to satisfy himself by eating dough made from chickpea flour. Chickpea flour means chana dal flour, yeah. But the demigods who have agreed to give me my share of the sacrifice will recover from all their injuries. So Prabhupada makes the point in the purport of verse 4 that Pusha's punishment would actually continue. Yeah. He'll become dependent on his disciples. to eat. He won't be able to use his teeth for eating, since he had displayed his teeth by laughing at Lord Shiva when Daksha uttered the curses. That's terrible, isn't it? And it just shows his intelligence was just completely rotten. A great person like Lord Shiva, and he laughs at him, like mocks him, like, look at you, you're a fool, ha ha, ha, Krishna. So he derided him by showing his teeth. And Srila Prabhupada concludes the very short purport, actually. It's 3 sentences. Prabhupada says, in other words, it was not appropriate for him to have teeth, for he had used them against Lord Shiva. Okay, on we go to verse 5. Those who have had their arms cut off will have to work with the arms of Ashwini Kumar. And those whose hands are cut off will have to do their work with the hands of Pusha. Yes, Pusha. That he was the last one just mentioned, that he will have to eat through the teeth of his disciples. So now he's further sort of implicated that those whose hands have been cut off during the great attack by the followers of Lord Shiva, headed by Virabhadra. So now they've got no hands. They'll have to do their work with the hands of the same Pusha, who will not be having teeth and will have to eat through his disciples. And when his disciples are not present, he can only eat chickpea flour or chana flour. So then the translation continues, the priests will also have to act in that manner. Yes. As for Bhrigu, he will have the beard from the goat's head. Because Bhrigu is a very famous devotee, actually. Very famous devotee. But somehow he became bewildered and he turned against Lord Shiva. What a mistake. So, okay, purport. So Bhrigu will get the beard from the head of the goat, which Daksha will get as his head. And Prabhupada makes the point here, actually, which I was going to mention, a couple of verses ago or so, that, they're going to put the head of a goat on Daksha's shoulders, and therefore the brain substance of Daksha and the brain from before, when he was just in a human form, compared to the brain substance of the goat, the head of the goat, which is now going to be on his shoulders, the brain substance is completely different, but the consciousness will be the same. Daksha consciousness, human consciousness. So, in other words, Daksha will then live and act as he had done before with his previous human head. He will function as he did before as a human. So therefore Prabhupada says the conclusion is that the consciousness, it is the consciousness of an individual which acts, not the actual brain substance. The brain substance is just an instrument, which has nothing to do with the actual degree, the amount of intelligence, the capabilities of the person's intelligence. Srila Prabhupada elsewhere has talked about the brain, the actual physical brain. as being something like a gearbox in a motor car. If you're familiar with motor cars, I'm sure at least some of you men are, I don't know about the ladies so much, but you would know that in a motor car you have the engine and then you have the driver. And in order to engage the engine and use the engine for driving, going here and there, you have to utilize a gearbox to channel the power to the wheels. And in different gears, first gear is normally the gear which you use when you're starting from having been in a stationary position. So you start in first gear, and then you change to second, and gradually you come up to fourth or fifth or whatever it may be, the top gear. Yes, so you need the gearbox. So the brain as such is like the gearbox, taking the commands from the consciousness of the conscious living entity and transmitting them to those commands to be carried out in different ways as appropriate. So Prabhupada goes on, real intelligence, mind and consciousness are part of the particular individual soul. And in the verses coming up, Prabhupada says, it'll be seen that Daksha was as intelligent as he was before. Now he's got the goat's head, but he's as intelligent as he was before with his human head, because he offers very nice prayers to Lord Shiva and to Lord Vishnu. And of course, there's no question of a goat being able to do that at all. So the conclusion is that the brain substance is not the center of intelligence. It's the actual consciousness of the soul that works intelligently. So Krishna consciousness, the Krishna consciousness movement, is for purifying our consciousness. Doesn't matter what sort of brain one has, because if we transfer our consciousness from matter, just being absorbed materially, to Krishna, then our lives become successful. And Lord Krishna confirms in Bhagavad Gita that anyone who takes up Krishna consciousness achieves the highest goal of life, regardless of how abominable he was before. And of course, we get some, you could say, very interesting candidates coming forward to become Krishna conscious. We really do. But, Jagai and Madai, of course, classic cases, but they became pure devotees because their consciousness became cleansed. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying that specifically, anyone in Krishna consciousness goes back to Godhead, back to home, on leaving his present material body. Verse 6, the great sage Maitreya said, "My dear Vidura, all the personalities present were very much satisfied in heart and soul upon hearing the words of Lord Shiva, who is the best among the benedictors," those who give benedictions. So yes, we have a purport here, a couple of paragraphs. So here Lord Shiva is described as Midushtama, the best of the benedictors. And of course he's also known as Ashutosh, that he's very quickly satisfied and quickly angered. So Bhagavad Gita tells us, of course, less intelligent people go to demigods for material benedictions, and often, or even generally, I mean, it's extremely common, if not just sort of almost the general rule, but something like that. They go to Lord Shiva, because he has, you could say, a reputation for being particularly easily satisfied and giving whatever's asked for without really, sort of analyzing and thinking so much. So therefore he's called Midushtama, best of the benedictors. So of course material people, they always want material profit. They are not serious about spiritual profit. Oh gosh. So second paragraph, sometimes, Prabhupada says, sometimes Lord Shiva becomes the best benedictor in spiritual life. And Srila Prabhupada in the second paragraph tells the whole story. It's basically the whole story of Sanatana Goswami and the touchstone and the Shivite. If you know that story, I mean, it's right there in detail. Let me just give a little overview of the story. Sanatana Goswami had a touchstone, which he put in the rubbish heap because he wasn't interested in a touchstone, because touchstone is material. You can touch it to different things, they'll turn to gold, and that's all very well if you want gold, but touchstones can't really help you become Krishna conscious. So he just threw it in the rubbish, and he was chanting Hare Krishna, because that's how a devotee can really get mercy and benefit. But some Shivite, some poor Brahmin approached Lord Shiva for a benediction. And Lord Shiva advised that person to go and see Sanatana Goswami because he's got a touchstone. So off he went and he asked for the touchstone, and Sanatana Goswami said, sure, you can have it, it's in the rubbish heap, just take it out and go. So he did that, and he's going around touching things and turning them into gold. Yeah. Touch a tree, touch a rock, touch a brick, touch a pen, look, oh, it's gold already. Not actually. Touch a person, a gold person. Anyway, seriously. He was touching and things were turning to gold. And he thought, this is just wonderful. this is sort of like the perfection of life. But then a thought came to him that if this is so wonderful, why did Sanatana Goswami keep it, throw it away into the rubbish heap? He must have something better. So therefore he went back and approached Sanatana Goswami and said, you must have something better. And Sanatana said, yeah, I've got something much better than the touchstone. Oh gosh. And the Shivite said, well, can I have it? And Sanatana Goswami said, yes, you can have it, but I will only give it to you if you'll throw the touchstone away into the Yamuna, just away. So, nobody will get it. So he did that, the poor Brahmin did that, and came back, and Sanatana Goswami initiated him with the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So therefore, by the benediction of Lord Shiva, this Brahmin got the association of the best devotee of Lord Krishna, Sanatana Goswami, and got initiated, got the Mahamantra, and, well, we assume he became a very nice devotee himself in due course. Right, so that's the story that Prabhupada tells there in the second paragraph. Verse 7. Thereafter Bhrigu, the chief of the great sages, invited Lord Shiva to come to the sacrificial arena. Thus the demigods, accompanied by the sages, Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, all went to the place where the great sacrifice was being performed. Okay, right, so there's a purport here. Not a big purport, but it's something. So, of course, Daksha's whole sacrifice had been disturbed by Lord Shiva and his followers. And therefore all the demigods and Lord Brahma and the great sages and just everyone who was involved, they specifically requested Lord Shiva to come to revive the sacrificial fire. There is a common phrase, Prabhupada says, Shiva Hina Yajna. Any sacrifice without the presence of Lord Shiva is baffled. Even though Lord Vishnu is the master, the Lord of all sacrifice. But in particularly these traditional Vedic yajnas, all the demigods have to be there also. Right, so we carry on into the second section, which is verse 8 and verse 9. And it's just the two verses. They do have purports actually, but we'll just read straight through. Verse 8. After everything was executed exactly as directed by Lord Shiva, Daksha's body was joined to the head of the animal meant to be killed in the sacrifice. So, yes, there's very, very short purport. I'll just read it. This time all the demigods and great sages were very careful not to irritate Lord Shiva. Therefore, whatever he asked was done. It is specifically said here that Daksha's body was joined to the head of an animal, a goat. Verse 9. When the animal's head was fixed on the body of King Daksha, Daksha was immediately brought to consciousness, and as he awakened from sleep, the king, Daksha, saw Lord Shiva standing before him. Right, so there's a purport here. Where is a purport? It's somewhat substantial purport. So, Srila Prabhupada explains that the example which is given here is that Daksha got up as if he'd just been woken up from deep sleep. In Sanskrit it's called supta ivotasto. Supta ivotasto. Which Prabhupada says the meaning is that after a man awakens from sleep, he immediately remembers all the duties which he must execute. Generally it's like that with us, isn't it? Every morning we wake up, every night we sleep. Every morning we wake up and we know what we're going to do now. It's not like we wake up and it's, where am I? What am I to do? What is going on? No, it's just business as usual. Of course, we should also bear in mind, Daksha has been dead for, a day or something like that. Yeah, at least his body has been dead. For a day, I don't know, maybe it was 2 days, but it was It was some length of time, and generally people, their bodies, if somehow or other the body becomes damaged and dies, but then there's a period of time, I mean, at least if the damage is not too severe, but the heart has stopped beating and the breathing has stopped, which, well, it doesn't actually say exactly, but well, Prabhupada says the body was lying dead. Yeah. So normally, if someone is in such a condition for more than, I don't know what, a matter of minutes or something like that, then, there's too much damage done by the lack of oxygen and whatever else is, stops functioning when the body becomes dead. So therefore, after a day, or whether it's 1 or 2 days, but whatever it is, it's something like that. People you cannot revive them. But in this case, Daksha just got up, and there he was, fully functional. Right, so, by the grace of Lord Shiva, as soon as he got the goat's head, he came back to consciousness, which indicates consciousness is also individual. So, in other words, Daksha took another body. At least this is how Prabhupada puts it. He took another body when he got the goat's head. But because consciousness is individual, his consciousness remained the same. So therefore bodily construction has nothing to do, bodily construction, particularly the brain, nothing to do with the development of consciousness. The consciousness is carried with the transmigration of the soul. So he was the same soul, and his subtle body was the same subtle body. So Prabhupada makes the point, interesting point. There are many instances like this in Vedic literature. Bharat Maharaj was king, but then he got the body of a deer, but he retained more or less the same consciousness. Yeah. He knew, Prabhupada says he knew that he had been Bharat, and he knew that he had now got the body of a deer because of being absorbed in a deer at the time of death. But in spite of having the body of a deer, his consciousness was as good as it had been in the body of Maharaj Bharat. So the arrangement of the Lord is so nice that if a person's consciousness is turned to Krishna consciousness, there's no doubt in the next life he'll be a great devotee, even if he gets a different type of body. Right. So there we go. Now the third section, Daksha offers prayers to Lord Shiva. This is from verse 10 to verse 15. And what should we do? We'll definitely read the verses because, there's significant purports here, at least a few. So, right, Daksha offers prayers to Lord Shiva, verse 10 to verse 15. 10. At that time when Daksha saw Lord Shiva, who rides upon a bull, his heart, which was polluted by envy of Lord Shiva, was immediately cleansed, just as the water in a lake is cleansed by autumn rains. 11. King Daksha wanted to offer prayers to Lord Shiva, But as he remembered the ill-fated death of his daughter Sati, his eyes filled with tears, and in bereavement his voice choked up, and he could not say anything. 12. At this time King Daksha, afflicted by love and affection, was very much awakened to his real senses. With great endeavor he pacified his mind, checked his feelings, and with pure consciousness began to offer prayers to Lord Shiva. King Daksha said, "My dear Lord Shiva, I committed a great offense against you, but you are so kind that instead of withdrawing your mercy, you have done me a great favor by punishing me. You and Lord Vishnu never neglect even useless, unqualified Brahmins. Why then should you neglect me, who am engaged in performing sacrifices?" 14. My dear great and powerful Lord Shiva, you were created first from the mouth of Lord Brahma in order to protect the Brahmins in pursuing education, austerities, vows, and self-realization. As protector of the Brahmins, you always protect the regulative principles they follow, just as a cowherd boy keeps a stick in his hand to give protection to the cows. And verse 15, I do not know your full glories. For this reason, I threw arrows of sharp words at you in the open assembly, although you did not take them into account. I was going down to hell because of my disobedience to you, who are the most respectable personality. But you took compassion upon me and saved me by awarding punishment. I request that you be pleased by your own mercy, since I cannot satisfy you by my words. Wow, pretty amazing, isn't it? Okay, so let's go through. There are some substantial purports here. And also there's a few verses which don't have, but that's okay. Right, so Daksha offers prayers to Lord Shiva, verse 10 to verse 15. Verse 10. At that time when Daksha saw Lord Shiva, who rides upon a bull, his heart, which was polluted by envy of Lord Shiva, was immediately cleansed, just as the water in a lake is cleansed by autumn rains. Right, so Srila Prabhupada says, here we have, this is an example, why Lord Shiva is called auspicious. It's the translation of the word Shiva, auspicious. So why is he called auspicious? Because if anyone sees him with devotion and reverence, their heart is immediately cleansed. Just see. Daksha was polluted with envy of Lord Shiva, but when he saw him with a little love and devotion, his heart was immediately cleansed. So Prabhupada gives the example of, in the rainy season, reservoirs of water become dirty. Rainy season means like heavy rains, and so a lot of dirt is stirred up, and in the streams and rivers and so on, the water is dirty. But then the gentle autumn rains come, and they don't stir anything up. So all the dirt, the dust, the sediment and everything settles in the bodies of water. And as a result, the water becomes clear. So similarly, although Daksha's heart was impure due to his slander, his criticism, his offensive words towards Lord Shiva, He became purified when he saw him nicely, when he saw him with veneration and respect. He became immediately purified. Verse 11. And 11 and 12 actually have no purport, so I'll just read both of them through. King Daksha wanted to offer prayers to Lord Shiva, but as he remembered the ill-fated death of his daughter Sati, his eyes filled with tears, and in bereavement his voice choked up, and he could not say anything. At this time, King Daksha, afflicted by love and affection, was very much awakened to his real senses. With great endeavor he pacified his mind, checked his feelings, and with pure consciousness began to offer prayers to Lord Shiva. Verse 13. King Daksha said, "My dear Lord Shiva, I committed a great offense against you, but you were so kind that instead of withdrawing your mercy, you have done me a great favor by punishing me. You and Lord Vishnu never neglect even useless, unqualified Brahmins. Why then should you neglect me, who am engaged in performing sacrifices?" So, okay, purport is here. So although, Prabhupada says, although Daksha feels defeated, and I mean he's been extremely severely defeated actually, but he knew his punishment was the mercy of Lord Shiva. Yeah. And at that time somehow he remembered how Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu are never neglectful of Brahmins, even though sometimes the Brahmins are unqualified and sometimes they may do improper things. And this is so applicable. And it's a very interesting point Prabhupada raises now. According to Vedic civilization, a descendant of a Brahmin family should not be heavily punished, even if they do some nonsense. Prabhupada is now going to elaborate by explaining about Ashvatthama, who killed the children of the Pandavas and wanted to kill Parikshit in the womb of Uttara. So even though Lord Krishna condemned Ashvatthama and others did too, like Bhima said, just wipe him out, just destroy him. But Arjuna excused him because he was the son of a Brahmin. Although he wasn't really a Brahmin in qualification, but he was biologically the son of a good Brahmin, you could say, Dronacharya. So therefore the word Brahma Bandhu Shu used here is significant. Brahma Bandhu means someone born in a Brahmin family, but not up to the standard of being like a proper Brahmin. So Daksha was born of a great father of Lord Brahma himself, but his treatment of Lord Shiva was not Brahminical, and his treatment of Sati, for that matter, not Brahminical at all. So he wasn't a perfect Brahmin. But Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu are affectionate to even imperfect Brahmins. So therefore, Lord Shiva punished Daksha. But if you remember the two types of punishments, he punished him not as an enemy, but as like a son, just to bring him to his senses. And Daksha understood this. So he acknowledges the mercy of Lord Krishna and Lord Shiva towards fallen Brahmins, including and even specifically here himself. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, although he was fallen, his vow was to execute the sacrifice, as is the duty of Brahmins, and thus he began his prayers to Lord Shiva. Verse 14, my dear great and powerful Lord Shiva, you were created first from the mouth of Lord Brahma in order to protect the Brahmins in pursuing education, austerities, vows, and self-realization. As protector of the Brahmins, you always protect the regulative principles they follow, just as a cowherd boy keeps a stick in his hand to give protection to the cows. Right, so there's purport here. In fact, fairly substantial. So Prabhupada begins by saying that for humans it's a specific function that, regardless of their social status, they have to control their minds and senses by following Vedic regulative principles. Shiva here is called Pashupati. Pashupala. Pashupati, you can say, He's called like that. Pashu means the animals and Pati means the master or protector, lord of the animals. Lord Shiva is called that because he always protects the living entities in their developed consciousness so they can follow Varnashram. Yes. And Pashu, Prabhupada says actually, Pashu refers to animals, but it also refers to humans. So anyway, Lord Shiva always protects the animals and the animalistic living entities. Means degraded humans who are not very advanced in the spiritual sense. He's a representative of the Supreme Lord. Prabhupada talks then about the Varnashram positions and in regard to the universal form. Kshatriyas from the arms, Vaishyas from the abdomen or waist, Sudras from the legs, Brahmins from the mouth, to accept charity for worship of Lord Krishna and to spread Vedic knowledge. So therefore Lord Shiva is known as Pashupati, the protector of the Brahmins and other living entities. Prabhupada says he protects them from the attacks of non-Brahmins, uncultured people who are against self-realization. So Prabhupada continues on in the next paragraph, talking about this term Pashupati, that another feature of this word Pashupati is that people who are attached to Vedic rituals but don't understand the Lord are no more advanced than animals. How's that? That's powerful, isn't it? People who are just attached to the Vedic rituals and don't understand who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they're no more advanced than animals. So in the beginning, in the second chapter, in fact, of Srimad Bhagavatam, it said that if you do the rituals of the Vedas but don't develop Krishna consciousness, then all of your efforts in the rituals are a waste of time. Yeah. Just a big waste of time. So, Lord Shiva's aim in destroying the yajna was to punish Daksha for neglecting him, yeah. His punishment was like a cowherd boy who keeps a stick to frighten the animals, because the animals can't reason or argue. If there's no stick, they're not going to obey. So for animalistic people, force is required. The more advanced humans can be convinced by reasons, arguments, shastric authority. But the people attached to the Vedic rituals, without devotional service, without any Krishna consciousness, they're almost like animals. So Lord Shiva is in charge of giving them protection and sometimes punishing them, like Daksha. I tell you, sometimes these purports of Srila Prabhupada, they are absolutely amazing. Verse 15, Daksha continues, I do not know your full glories. For this reason I threw arrows of sharp words at you in the open assembly, although you did not take them into account. I was going down to hell because of my disobedience to you, who are the most respectable personality. But you took compassion upon me and saved me by awarding punishment. I request that you be pleased by your own mercy, since I cannot satisfy you by my words. Wow, we have to hand it to Daksha. That's very profound. It's kind of like, the gopis, or Lord Krishna speaking to the gopis. I cannot repay you for your glorious deeds of service to me. I just can't reciprocate adequately. So you'll just have to be satisfied with your own glorious activity. So anyway, here now, verse 15, the purport. So Prabhupada makes the point, very important point, that as usual, a devotee in an adverse situation accepts that situation as the mercy of the Lord. And it's a fact that the insulting words of Daksha towards Lord Shiva were enough to have him thrown into hell perpetually. But Shiva punished him to neutralize the offense. Daksha understood this and was grateful. And it's like a father punishing the child. When the child is older, he understands it wasn't really punishment. It was mercy. He was helping me. So Daksha, taking Lord Shiva's punishment as mercy, is a sign of his making advancement. And it's said that a devotee never takes any miserable condition to be condemnation by the Lord, but rather takes it as grace. And even the devotee thinks, I should have been punished more, but the Lord has protected me. Thus I got token punishment. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, thinking of his grace in that way, a devotee always surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead more and more seriously, and is not disturbed by such so-called punishment. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.